As the council chambers emptied, Kithrax gathered his data crystals with deliberate precision. His inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of deep distress among his kind that few other species could recognize. The council's dismissal of his warning wasn't merely disappointing, it was potentially catastrophic. "Ambassador," a melodic voice chimed behind him. "Your presentation was most thorough." Thrax turned to face Delegate Safine of the Lumidary Collective, her translucent form shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. The Lumidary had abstained from the vote, neither supporting his proposal nor rejecting it. Yet not thorough enough to convince the council, Kithrax replied, his vocal sacs deflating slightly. "The council sees what it wishes to see," Safine responded, her light patterns shifting to what Kithrax recognized as the lumidary expression of cautious concern. "Most species prefer comfort to truth." Kithrax secured his final data crystal, the one containing the classified human military archives that his research team had spent years compiling. The humans have a concept they call preventative medicine, addressing potential illness before symptoms manifest. The council prefers to wait until the disease is terminal. Safine drifted closer, her voice lowering to a whisper that only Kithrax's sensitive auditory membranes could detect. "Not all of us dismiss your warnings, Ambassador. The Lumidary remember the Phyrexian expansion. We remember how a seemingly primitive species transformed into a galactic threat within a single generation. The Phyrexians were nothing compared to what humans might become," Kithrax responded. "The Phyrexians were naturally aggressive, predictable in their violence. Humans," he hesitated, searching for the right words. "Humans create art about their own extinction. They imagine countless ways their civilization might end, then develop technologies to prevent each scenario. They prepare for threats that don't yet exist." Safine's luminescence dimmed thoughtfully. "Perhaps that makes them wise, not dangerous. The difference is often circumstantial," Thrax countered. "A species that can innovate rapidly under existential threat becomes either the galaxy's greatest defender or its most formidable enemy. The deciding factor is how they're treated upon their emergence onto the galactic stage." Their conversation was interrupted by the approaching heavy footfalls of War Commander Turok. The massive Valaxian's exoskeletal armor clicked with each movement, weapon systems humming in standby mode, even in the supposedly peaceful council chambers. "Ambassador Kithrax." Turok's translator rendered his guttural language into standard galactic common. "The Valaxian Imperium thanks you for your concern, misplaced though it may be. Rest assured, we have studied human military capabilities extensively." Thrax's scales rippled with skepticism. "And what conclusion has the mighty Imperium reached?" Turok's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. "Their most advanced weapons would barely penetrate our scout vessel's defensive shields. Their understanding of physics is elementary. Their computational systems are laughably primitive." "You measure their technology," Kithrax observed quietly. "I measure their potential. Potential is irrelevant," Turok dismissed. "The Zinthar Consortium has already dispatched their initial contact vessels. Within 5 standard cycles, humans will be integrated into the galactic economy as a resource extraction partner. The Valaxian Imperium will establish a security presence to ensure compliance with council regulations." "You mean to exploit them?" Thrax stated flatly. Turok's massive form tensed briefly before relaxing into a posture of diplomatic restraint. "We mean to guide them, as we have guided dozens of emerging species. The strong lead, the weak follow. This is the natural order. Your species' insistence on evolutionary caution has always been a curious philosophical quirk, Ambassador." After the war commander departed, Safine's light patterns shifted to deep concern. "He speaks of guidance, but means control. The Valaxians see only the humans' current capabilities," Kithrax replied. "They cannot comprehend what humans might become if threatened." He secured his case of data crystals and straightened to his full height. "The council has made its decision. Now we all must live with the consequences. As Kthrax moved toward the chamber exit, the ancient Dovan observer approached, his hovering mobility platform pulsing with soft energy fields. The observer's species was among the oldest in the galaxy, their biological forms long since transcended into something between matter and energy. Ambassador, the observer's thoughts translated directly into audible speech. Your warning today reminded me of ancient records from the pre-unification era. There was another species once, similar to these humans in their adaptability. The records of their fate were deliberately obscured by the early council. Thrax paused, his interest piqued despite his disappointment. What became of them? The observer's energy field flickered with what might have been hesitation. The records are fragmentary, but suggest they were initially exploited, then rebelled with unexpected effectiveness. The conflict that followed, the ancient being's voice faded momentarily. The early council deemed the complete records too destabilizing to preserve. Then history prepares to repeat itself. Kthrax observed grimly, with none the wiser for past mistakes. As he departed the council chambers, Kthrax made a decision. His warning had been ignored, but his duty to galactic stability remained. He would establish a monitoring outpost near the human solar system, not to enforce the quarantine he'd proposed, but to observe and perhaps, when the inevitable crisis came, to serve as an intermediary. The humans had a concept in their historical records that fascinated him: the loyal opposition. Perhaps that would be his role in the events to come, loyal to the galaxy's true long-term interests, even when opposing the Council's short-sighted decisions. 3 months after first contact, Alina stood in the sterile observation chamber of the newly constructed Zinthar Medical Research Facility in Geneva. Below, through the transparent floor, doctors applied alien healing technology to patients with conditions once considered terminal. Cancer disappeared under targeted nanite swarms. Degenerative neural conditions reversed as quantum fields realigned damaged pathways. Miraculous, isn't it? Broker Malzin's translator hummed beside her. The Zinthar executive's compound eyes reflected the procedures below in countless tiny mirrors. Your species will soon forget disease was ever a concern. Alina nodded, maintaining her practiced diplomatic smile, while her enhanced neural implant, another gift from the Zinthar, recorded everything for later analysis. The benefits to humanity are undeniable, though I'm curious about long-term maintenance requirements. Minimal, Malzin assured her, 2 of his secondary limbs gesturing dismissively. Annual calibration visits from our technicians will ensure optimal functionality. Annual dependency, Alina mentally translated. The pattern was becoming clear across all alien technologies. Incredible capabilities paired with deliberate limitations that kept humans reliant on their benefactors. The United Nations Extraterrestrial Relations Committee has prepared additional questions about the asteroid mining proposals, Alina said, changing subjects smoothly. Several nations have expressed concerns about extraction rates exceeding the terms outlined in the preliminary agreements. Malzin's exoskeleton shifted in what Alina had learned was the Zinthar equivalent of a dismissive shrug. Minor discrepancies in translation. The revised documents will clarify expectations. Later that evening, Alina met with Admiral Chen in the supposedly secure basement of a Washington, D.C. restaurant. Security suites had detected no surveillance devices, but both spoke in coded language regardless. The medical technologies exceed anything we could have developed in a century, Alina explained, transferring her neural implants data to Chen's secure tablet. But each system contains deliberate limitations. The nanites require proprietary programming to replicate. The quantum realignment fields destabilize without regular recalibration by their technicians. Chen nodded grimly. Same pattern with their energy systems and propulsion technology. We can operate what they give us, but not reproduce or modify it. Classical empire-building tactics, Alina observed. Create dependency, extract resources, maintain technological superiority. Chen's expression darkened. The Valaxians are moving faster than the Zinthar. Their cultural exchange program has already recruited 5,000 human volunteers for their off-world training facilities. Military recruitment, Elena translated. Precisely. And the Kintai Enlightenment Centers have expanded to 30 major cities. Their neural stimulation technology creates something akin to addiction in test subjects. The restaurant owner appeared with their food, a simple meal that wouldn't attract attention, then disappeared back into the kitchen. When they were alone again, Elena leaned forward. The stolen data contained references to something called the Cathrax Warning. It appears to be related to humanity specifically, something that was debated and dismissed by their leadership. Chen's eyes narrowed. A warning about us. From whom? Someone named Cathrax. I believe he's a member of the Galactic Council that governs interactions between spacefaring species. A warning that we might be dangerous. Chen asked, a hint of grim satisfaction in his voice. Perhaps, and one that was ignored in favor of exploitation. Elena pushed her food aside, appetite gone. There's something else. My research team has been studying the biological samples we've obtained from our visitors. Their medical technology is astonishing, but their natural immune systems are remarkably underdeveloped. Explain. Species that relied on technology for millennia instead of natural selection. They engineered away disease rather than developing robust immune responses. The Zinthar haven't experienced a natural pandemic in 50,000 years. The Valaxians eliminated biological warfare so long ago they've lost all natural resistance. Chen's expression shifted as he processed the implications, a potential vulnerability. One they don't even consider a threat anymore, Elena confirmed. Like bringing soldiers with no disease resistance to a continent with unfamiliar pathogens. Like Europeans arriving in the Americas, Chen murmured. But in reverse. Their conversation was interrupted by Chen's secure communications device. His face hardened as he read the message. The Valaxians have announced the establishment of their first permanent military base in Nevada. Construction begins tomorrow. They're moving quickly, Elena observed. Too quickly. The original agreements specified consultation periods before any permanent installations. Chen's jaw tightened. We need to accelerate the Phoenix Protocol. I'll speak with the Joint Chiefs tonight. As they prepared to leave separately, Elena hesitated. James, do you think there's a way to contact this Cathrax? If he warned against interaction with humanity, he might not approve of how we're being exploited. Finding allies among them would be valuable, Chen agreed. But we'd need secure channels off-planet. Technology we don't yet possess. Elena's gaze was resolute. Then we'll develop it ourselves. They've given us just enough pieces to start putting the puzzle together. Carefully, Chen cautioned. If they realize we're adapting their technologies, they'll see the warning was justified. Elena finished. All the more reason to make contact with Cathrax. He might be the only one who truly understands what humanity is capable of. Outside, the night sky was filled with the distant lights of alien vessels in orbit, beautiful stars that masked the beginning of Earth's quiet subjugation. The Australian Prime Minister's hands trembled as she addressed the emergency cabinet session. Outside the Parliament building in Canberra, riots had entered their third day. The death toll from the Zinthar medication embargo had reached 15,000 and was climbing hourly. We have no choice, she concluded, her voice hollow with defeat. We must resign the mining regulations and permit them unrestricted access to the outback extraction zones. Minister Carrington slammed his fist on the table. This is nothing short of biological blackmail. They deliberately made millions dependent on their medications, then cut the supply the moment we enforced our sovereignty. And now 15,000 Australians are dead, the health minister responded quietly, with projections of 50,000 more within the week if supplies aren't restored. The defense minister, Thomas Reynolds, remained silent throughout the debate, his expression unreadable. As Admiral Chen's unofficial liaison to the Australian government, his true thoughts remained carefully guarded. After the cabinet capitulated to the Zinthar demands, Reynolds encrypted a brief message to Phoenix Protocol headquarters. Australia fallen. Extraction pattern established. Population dependency weaponized effectively. Similar scenarios play out across the globe with disturbing regularity. Nations that attempted to regulate alien activities found their dependent populations suddenly without critical technologies or medications. Resistance crumbled within days, sometimes hours. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the Phoenix Protocol's Central Command had evolved from a makeshift resistance center into something approaching a parallel government. Representatives from 36 nations now coordinated humanity's covert response to alien exploitation. Admiral Chen studied the global situation map with grim concentration. Red indicators showed alien installations spreading across every continent, a metastasizing network of control and resource extraction. The Valaxian military presence has doubled in the past month, his intelligence chief reported. 17 major bases established, with at least a dozen more under construction. And the human recruits? Chen asked. Over 20,000 now serving off-world. Their communications are heavily monitored, but we've managed to establish covert contact with several key individuals. The Valaxians are using them primarily as shock troops against something called the Moran Resistance in a distant system. Dr. Vasquez entered the command center, accompanied by her research team's lead biotechnologist. We've made significant progress, she announced without preamble. Her eyes were rimmed with dark circles, evidence of sleepless weeks in the underground laboratories. Project Pandora has moved from theoretical to practical application. Chen dismissed the other staff, initiating the command center's highest security protocols. Show me. Alina projected a hologram displaying complex molecular structures. These are engineered pathogens specifically designed for each major alien species present on Earth. They target unique aspects of alien biology without affecting humans or Earth's ecosystem. Effects? Chen asked, studying the projections. Primarily neurological and sensory disruption. Confusion, disorientation, motor control issues. Non-lethal but severely debilitating for periods of 2 to 3 weeks. Recovery is complete with no permanent damage. Chen nodded appreciatively. A humane approach, despite what they've done to us. Humanity must be better than our oppressors, Alina replied firmly. The pathogens are ready for production, but deployment remains problematic. We need vectors that can spread efficiently through their populations without being detected. I may have a solution, Chen said. Operation Trojan is showing promise. We've identified disillusioned individuals among all major alien factions, beings who object to the exploitation of Earth on moral grounds, or who've been marginalized within their own hierarchies. Alina raised an eyebrow. Alien allies. More like informants at this stage, Chen clarified. But they provide potential vectors for Pandora when the time comes. Their meeting was interrupted by the arrival of Lieutenant Santos, Phoenix Protocol's alien psychology specialist. We've decoded more of the Kintai communications, she reported urgently. They're accelerating their timetable for the consciousness harvesting program. Explain, Chen demanded. The Enlightenment centers aren't just creating addiction to neural stimulation, Santos explained. They're building a network of human minds that can be collectively accessed and utilized. Alina's expression hardened. Utilized how? As processing nodes for their computational systems. Human creativity harnessed and networked. Those who've been attending their centers for months are already being subtly integrated. Chen turned back to the global map, his decision crystallizing. We're running out of time. The Valaxians control our orbital space. The Zinthar control our resources and health. The Kintai are beginning to control our minds. We need to move forward with contact. Thrax? Alina asked. Chen nodded. Our deep space communication array at the Lunar Farsight facility is nearly operational. If this council member truly warned against interaction with humanity, he may be our only potential ally among their kind. Alina studied the Pandora pathogen models floating above the display table. And if he won't help us? Then humanity stands alone, Chen replied. But standing alone is something our species has considerable experience with. Lieutenant Santos hesitated, then spoke again. There's something else. The Kintai communications referenced a harvesting deadline 6 months from now. After that point, something called the integration begins. What does that mean? Elena asked. Unknown, Santos admitted. But they're sharing the timeline with the Valaxians and Synthar. All 3 major factions are working toward this deadline. Chen's expression darkened. Then we have 6 months to prepare our response. Contact Ambassador Kithrax. Deploy our alien allies and accelerate Project Pandora. Even targeting alien civilians. Elena asked quietly. Chen looked at the global map, at the spreading network of alien control, at the statistics showing resource depletion and human casualties. There are no civilians in an occupation force, Doctor. Only oppressors who haven't yet raised weapons. Outside their mountain fortress, alien ships streaked across the night sky, their lights a constant reminder of humanity's growing subjugation. Lieutenant Maya Santos navigated the crowded streets of Bangkok with practiced ease, her neural implant programmed to avoid the ubiquitous Zinthar surveillance nodes. The night market provided perfect cover, thousands of humans and dozens of aliens mingling in a chaotic tapestry of commerce and cultural exchange. Her target sat at a corner food stall, his crystalline exoskeleton deliberately dull to avoid attention. Unlike most Zinthar, who prized the brilliant reflective qualities of their natural armor, Broker Vexil had taken pains to appear unremarkable. The red curry is quite remarkable, Santos said as she took the seat opposite him, using the predetermined code phrase. Vexil's compound eyes shifted briefly. I prefer the green. Less likely to cause digestive distress. The countersign delivered, he continued eating with his feeding appendages while his translator remained deactivated. Santos ordered a dish she wouldn't touch, then slipped a small data crystal beneath the table. Vexil absorbed it into a specialized receptor pouch without breaking his feeding rhythm. The consortium's quarterly extraction projections, she said quietly, in exchange for the promised information. Vexil's mandibles clicked softly. The integration timeline has accelerated. 4 months now, not 6. The Kintai Consciousness Network achieved critical mass earlier than anticipated. Santos kept her expression neutral despite the alarming news. And the quarantine facilities. Constructed on your moon's far side, hidden from Earth observation. Once the integration begins, resistant humans will be relocated there for processing. Processing how? Vexil's feeding appendages stilled momentarily. You don't want to know the details, Lieutenant, but the Valaxians consider resistant humans valuable for their aggression traits. Properly conditioned minds can be repurposed. The implications turned Santos' stomach, but she maintained her professional demeanor. And what of the Kithrax communication? Intercepted and blocked by Valaxian orbital security. Your transmission never reached him. Vexil resumed eating, his movements deliberately casual. But there are other channels. The Lumidary Collective maintains communication with Kithrax's exile colony. They share his concerns about humanity's treatment. Can you establish contact? Not directly. But there is a Lumidary cultural attaché stationed at their embassy in Singapore, one who has expressed ethical concerns about current policies toward Earth. Santos nodded slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me. Vexil's translator remained off, but Santos' neural implant translated his native clicks and whistles. I watched my brood cluster starve during the resource wars because the consortium prioritized profit over life. I won't watch another species suffer the same fate. As Santos prepared to leave, Vexil added one final piece of information. The Valaxian War Commander Tarak arrives next week to oversee the final security preparations. His ship carries the command codes for all Valaxian forces in your system. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, in a research station officially abandoned years earlier, Dr. Elena Vasquez supervised the final testing of Pandora's delivery system. The laboratory had been expanded into a massive complex, invisible to orbital surveillance, and protected by experimental shield technology reverse-engineered from Zenthar defensive systems. The nanite vectors are performing beyond expectations, her chief engineer reported, watching microscopic machines navigate a simulated alien circulatory system. Once introduced to the host, they'll synthesize and release the pathogen gradually over 72 hours, then self-destruct without a trace. And detection risk? Elena asked. Minimal. We've incorporated Kintai quantum field manipulation to mask their signature, their own technology rendered against them. Elena allowed herself a moment of professional pride. In just 5 years, human scientists working with limited resources had taken disparate alien technologies and synthesized them into something entirely new, something that exceeded the capabilities of the original designers. Package the production systems for transport to the deployment sites, she ordered, and prepare for distribution to our embedded assets. Santiago, Mumbai, Berlin, and Cairo will coordinate regional deployment when the order comes. Her secure communication device chimed with an encrypted message from Admiral Chen. Trojan assets confirm integration timeline accelerated. 4 months remaining. Valaxian command vessel arriving next week. Opportunity assessment requested. Elena considered the implications. 4 months instead of 6 dramatically compressed their preparation timeline. But the arrival of the Valaxian command vessel that presented an unexpected opportunity. She composed her response carefully. Pandora delivery systems ready for distribution. Suggest Operation Decapitation concurrent with Trojan activation. Await command decision. In the Phoenix Protocol's Rocky Mountain headquarters, Admiral Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports with his senior staff. The global situation map showed alien control expanding daily, with human resistance diminishing as the Kintai Enlightenment Centers processed more minds. Lieutenant Santos has made contact with a potential Lumidari ally in Singapore, his intelligence chief reported. They may provide a communication channel to Thrax. And Dr. Vasquez reports Pandora is ready for deployment, his operations director added. She's suggesting we target the Valaxian command vessel when it arrives next week. Chen studied the projections thoughtfully. A bold move. If successful, it would disrupt their command structure precisely when we need them disoriented. And if unsuccessful, it would reveal our capabilities prematurely, his strategic advisor cautioned. Chen's decision crystallized. We won't have a better opportunity. The Valaxians are the military backbone of the occupation. Targeting their command structure first gives us our best chance of success. He drafted orders to all Phoenix Protocol cells worldwide. Operation Decapitation authorized. Primary target: Valaxian command vessel upon arrival. Secondary targets: all Valaxian command and control facilities. Deployment of Pandora Phase 1 approved. May humanity's resilience prove Kithrax's warning justified. Across Earth, hidden resistance fighters received their orders and began final preparations. The silent revolution was about to find its voice. The Valaxian flagship Dominance entered Earth orbit with a display of force meant to awe and intimidate. Its massive form eclipsed the sun over North America for a full 7 minutes, a calculated demonstration of power. Escort vessels performed precision maneuvers through the atmosphere, sonic booms shattering windows in major cities below. War Commander Trock's arrival broadcast overrode all Earth communications. People of Earth, be honored. The Valaxian Imperium extends its formal protection to your world. Resistance to this protection is not only futile but unnecessary. Accept your place in the galactic order, and prosperity will follow. In the White House Situation Room, the American president watched alongside other world leaders connected via secure channels. Their expressions ranged from resignation to barely concealed fury. They're not even pretending anymore. The German chancellor observed bitterly. This is naked military occupation. We have limited options. The Chinese president responded. Their weapons systems can target any point on Earth with precision. The demonstration in the Australian outback proved their capabilities. The American president's secure phone buzzed with a message marked Phoenix Protocol, the resistance organization his administration officially denied knowledge of while secretly supporting. The message was brief. Authorization requested for emergency response. Countdown initiated. His eyes met those of his counterparts on the screens. One by one, they gave subtle nods. Whatever Phoenix had planned, they would provide the necessary cover and deniability. The president typed a single word in response. Authorized. Aboard the Dominance, War Commander Turok surveyed Earth through the vessel's observation dome. His exoskeletal armor clicked as he turned to address the assembled Valaxian officers and representatives from other alien factions. The integration accelerates beyond projections, he announced with satisfaction. The Kintai report 90 million human minds partially connected to their network. The Zinthar have established resource extraction operations on all continents. Our own military installations now control all strategic points globally. Broker Malzin of the Zinthar Consortium shuddered appreciatively. The profit margins exceed our initial models. These humans are remarkably productive when properly managed. The Kintai representative, a being of translucent energy contained within an environmental field, pulsed with shimmering patterns. Their minds show unique potential. The creativity matrices we've harvested are unlike anything in our previous expansions. Rock's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his kind. The Cathrax warning appears increasingly absurd. These humans pose no threat worth considering. Their technology is primitive, their military forces fragmented, their resistance disorganized. Aboard the same vessel, 5 decks below, Lieutenant Jason Rivera of the Phoenix Protocol finished his maintenance routine on the environmental systems. His position as a technician, part of the human workforce the Valaxians had deemed necessary for their Earth operations, placed him perfectly for what would come next. His neural implant vibrated with the coded signal. Operation Decapitation was active. From a hidden compartment in his toolkit, Rivera extracted what appeared to be a standard Valaxian air filter. In reality, it contained billions of nanite delivery vectors programmed with the Pandora pathogen, specifically engineered for Valaxian biology. With practiced motions, he installed the filter into the command deck's air circulation system. The nanites would disperse gradually, infecting the Valaxian command structure over the next 24 hours. By the time symptoms appeared, it would be too late to contain. In Singapore, Lieutenant Santos sat across from the Lumidary Cultural Attaché in the Alien Embassy's meditation garden. The Lumidary's bioluminescent form shifted through patterns of cautious communication. Your message has been conveyed to Ambassador Thrax, the Lumidary confirmed. He is disturbed by developments on Earth. The exploitation pattern matches historical events that ended catastrophically. Will he help us? Santos asked directly. The Lumidary's lights pulsed in what might have been hesitation. Thrax holds no official position since his exile, but his warning about humanity was not merely about your potential threat to the galaxy. It was also about the threat to yourselves if provoked unwisely. We are well beyond provocation, Santos replied grimly. The Valaxians arrived today to formalize military occupation. The Kintai are harvesting human minds. The Zinthar are stripping our resources at unsustainable rates. Then Thrax's warning was prophetic in both directions. The Lumidary observed. He will come, Lieutenant, but whether he arrives in time to prevent catastrophe is uncertain. The wheels you have set in motion may already be unstoppable. Santos's neural implant vibrated with an alert. Operation Decapitation was proceeding across all targets globally. She had less than 30 minutes to exit the embassy before Pandora was released into the Lumidary environmental systems. She made a split-second decision. Tell your people to evacuate this embassy immediately. Consider it a gesture of good faith for Thrax's assistance. The Lumidary's luminescence flared with surprise. What is happening? Humanity is demonstrating why Thrax's warning should have been heeded, Santos answered, already moving toward the exit. Those who exploited us are about to pay the price. In the Rocky Mountain Command Center, Admiral Chen watched as indicators across the global map began to flash. Pandora deployment had begun at Valaxian installations worldwide. Initial reports showed successful infiltration of command vessels and bases. Phase 1 proceeding as planned, his operations director reported. No detection alerts from alien security systems. And the dominance? Chen asked. Agent Rivera confirms successful deployment. Estimated 24 hours until symptoms manifest throughout the command structure. Chen allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. Then we've struck the first blow. Prepare for Phase 2. Deployment against Zinthar and Kintai targets. His communications officer interrupted with urgent news. Admiral, deep space monitoring stations have detected an unidentified vessel approaching at high speed. It's not matching any known alien signature. Hostile. Chen demanded. Unknown, sir, but it's broadcasting on all frequencies in multiple languages, including Earth standards. The message repeats only 3 words. Cathrax is coming. 48 hours after Operation Decapitation began, the first symptoms appeared aboard the Valaxian flagship Dominance. War Commander Tarak was addressing his senior staff when his sensory appendages began to twitch uncontrollably. His speech slurred, mandibles clicking arrhythmically as he struggled to maintain his train of thought. Similar scenes played out across Valaxian installations worldwide. Their military precision crumbled as coordination centers fell into confusion. Warriors renowned for their discipline suddenly found themselves unable to follow basic protocols. Command structures dissolved into chaos as the pathogens spread through their ranks. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the effects from the Antarctic facility, data streams flowing in from embedded Phoenix operatives across the globe. The neurological disruption is exceeding projections, she reported to Admiral Chen via secure channel. Valaxian military effectiveness down 60% and declining rapidly. Any indication they've identified the source? Chen asked. None. Their medical technology is scanning for conventional pathogens. The nanite delivery vectors self-destructed after releasing Pandora, leaving no trace. They're completely blind to the attack vector. Chen's expression remained stoic, but satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. Deploy Phase 2. Target Zinthar command structures and distribution networks. Across Earth, Phoenix Protocol operatives activated secondary Pandora variants specifically designed for Zinthar biology. The elegant insectoid aliens, so confident in their biological superiority, had no defense against the tailored pathogen. Within hours, their executives and administrators began experiencing severe mathematical processing disruptions, a devastating blow to a species whose hierarchy and decision-making depended entirely on complex profit calculations. The Zinthar Consortium's Earth operations descended into paralysis. Mining operations halted as supervisors could no longer perform basic arithmetic. Distribution networks froze as logistics coordinators lost the ability to sequence simple tasks. Their much-vaunted economic stranglehold on humanity disintegrated in less than 12 hours. The Kintai detected the pattern first. Their consciousness network, already integrated with millions of human minds, sensed the cascading failures across Valaxian and Zinthar operations. Their central processing node in Geneva called an emergency council of their highest-ranking representatives. This is a coordinated attack, their primary consciousness determined, energy patterns fluctuating with alarm. Analysis indicates a biological vector specifically engineered for each species' unique neurological vulnerabilities. Impossible, the secondary consciousness objected. Human biotechnology is primitive. They lack the capability to engineer cross-species pathogens of this sophistication. Evidence suggests otherwise. The primary responded. Activate isolation protocols. Disconnect all Kintai nodes from physical contact with human environments. But the warning came too late. Phase 3 of Pandora was already active, carried by the human attendants who maintained the Kintai's physical infrastructure. Within hours, their consciousness network began experiencing critical failures. The ethereal being's carefully structured thought patterns dissolved into confusion as the pathogen disrupted the quantum-level processes that constituted their cognition. Across Earth, the aliens who had arrived as conquerors and exploiters now struggled simply to function. Their technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy they had fundamentally underestimated, an enemy fighting with weapons they had deemed obsolete millennia ago. Lieutenant Santos watched from the Singapore waterfront as the Luminary embassy vessel departed Earth's atmosphere at maximum acceleration. True to her word, she had warned them before Pandora was deployed against the other alien species. Her neural implant vibrated with an incoming priority message from Admiral Chen. Unidentified vessel entering Earth orbit. Preliminary analysis confirms non-standard configuration. Valaxian defensive fleet non-responsive. Zinthar merchant ships withdrawing. All personnel to secure positions. First contact protocols on standby. Santos looked skyward, knowing the mysterious vessel carrying Ambassador Thrax had arrived. Whether as savior or judge remained to be seen. In Antarctica, Alina received the same alert. She immediately secured the Pandora research data and prepared evacuation protocols. If this new arrival proved hostile, humanity's last defense might be the complete Pandora catalog, including lethal variants they had developed but chosen not to deploy. Status report on alien forces, she demanded of her staff. Valaxian military effectiveness down to 28% and falling, her analyst reported. Zinthar operations have ceased entirely. The Kintai consciousness network is fragmenting. They're withdrawing from integrated human minds to preserve core functions. Alina allowed herself a grim smile. Then humanity has demonstrated precisely what Thrax warned them about. Our capacity to adapt their own technologies against them. Our willingness to fight asymmetrically when conventionally outmatched. Her communication officer interrupted with breaking news. Dr. Vasquez, we're receiving a transmission from the unidentified vessel. It's requesting direct communication with Phoenix Protocol leadership. How could they possibly know about Phoenix? Alina demanded. Unknown, ma'am. But the message is addressed specifically to you and Admiral Chen. It's signed by Ambassador Thrax. Aboard his diplomatic vessel in Earth orbit, Thrax observed the planet below. His scales shifted through patterns of complex emotion. Vindication mingled with concern, admiration with apprehension. They'd done exactly as I predicted, he told his Luminary pilot. When threatened with exploitation, they responded with devastating efficiency. Yet they showed restraint. The Luminary observed. Our reports indicate the pathogens are non-lethal. They could have engineered extinction-level weapons. Thrax's inner eyelids flickered thoughtfully. That restraint may be humanity's most remarkable quality, and the galaxy's greatest hope. They'd demonstrated both the capability and the temperance that makes a true civilized species. His communication officer announced, Earth's Phoenix Protocol has responded. They're ready to establish direct contact. Thrax straightened his ceremonial robes. The moment of truth had arrived. For humanity, for the Galactic Council, and for his own long-held beliefs about this remarkable species that had proven his warnings justified. Open the channel, he instructed. It's time to offer humanity the place they've earned among the stars, not as subjects or resources, but as equals. Below, the once mighty alien occupation forces continued their confused struggle against an invisible enemy they had never thought to fear, paying the heavy price for ignoring the warning about humanity's true potential. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened amidst unprecedented crisis. Representatives from 17 systems reported critical disruptions as the Pandora pathogens spread through returning ships and personnel. The Grand Chamber, normally a model of ordered debate, vibrated with accusations and demands for retribution. Ambassador Thrax stood at the center of the storm, his position unique. Though reinstated as his species representative, he now also served as humanity's advocate, a role that earned him both respect and resentment from his peers. The Council must acknowledge its own culpability, Thrax declared, his translator rendering his complex harmonics into the standard galactic language. Humanity was identified as a species with unusual adaptive potential. Rather than proceeding with appropriate caution, the Council authorized unrestricted exploitation. The Zinthar High Broker struggled to articulate a response, still suffering mild cognitive effects from Pandora. The humans employed biological warfare against peaceful commercial operations. Peaceful. Elena Vasquez stepped forward, her eyes flashing with controlled anger. Earth's delegation had been granted limited speaking rights, itself a significant concession. Our data archives document over 3,000 violations of the original contact agreements. Resources extracted at 16 times the agreed rates. Medical technologies deliberately designed to create dependency, then withheld to force compliance. Admiral Chen added his own measured response. The Valaxian ultimatum threatened planetary sterilization if we resisted occupation. Their demonstration in the Australian outback proved their willingness to employ planetary-scale weapons against civilian populations. The chamber erupted in overlapping objections until the ancient Dovan observer raised his energy field in the traditional call for order. As the oldest council member, his authority transcended factional disputes. I have reviewed the evidence presented by both sides, the observer's thoughts translated directly into audible speech. The historical pattern is distressingly familiar. The exploitation protocols employed against Earth match those used against the Vrexians in the pre-unification era. The results, while less violent, are equally destabilizing to galactic order. The Valaxian representative, a junior officer replacing the incapacitated war commander Turok, pounded his armored appendage against the chamber floor. The humans must surrender their biological weapons and submit to quarantine. Their actions threaten the foundation of galactic civilization. As did yours, Cathrax countered. When you threatened a species possessing both the ingenuity to create asymmetric countermeasures and the restraint to avoid extinction-level retaliation. His inner eyelids flickered toward Elena. I have confirmed through independent analysis that the Pandora pathogens were deliberately engineered to be non-lethal. A species truly intent on destruction would not have shown such restraint. The debate continued for 3 full cycles, with positions gradually shifting as the practical realities became clear. The human delegation had arrived with a complete cure for all Pandora variants, to be provided freely once their terms were met. This leverage, combined with Cathrax's persuasive advocacy, gradually shifted the council toward accommodation rather than retribution. In a private chamber adjacent to the main council hall, Elena and Chen met with Cathrax and the Dovan observer for final negotiations. The quarantine proposal has been withdrawn, Cathrax informed them. Your demonstration of both capability and restraint has convinced most council members that humanity deserves recognition as a full galactic civilization. Most, but not all, Chen observed. The observer's energy field pulsed with what might have been amusement. Anonymity is rare in galactic politics, Admiral. The Valaxians will object on principle, and the Zinthar Consortium calculates significant profit losses. But the majority now favors integration over isolation. Integration on whose terms? Elena asked pointedly. That is the question that will shape the future, Cathrax acknowledged. The Council has accepted your core demands: dissolution of exploitative treaties, recognition of Earth's sovereignty, and prohibition of future economic subjugation. But implementation details remain contentious. Chen leaned forward, his expression resolute. Humanity will not accept half measures or gradual withdrawal. The occupation ends completely, effective immediately. And the Pandora countermeasure, the observer inquired, will be provided once alien forces have withdrawn from Earth and its orbital space. Elena confirmed, with additional protocols to prevent future exploitation of emerging species. This isn't just about Earth. It's about establishing a more equitable galactic order. Thrax's scales shifted to a pattern indicating deep satisfaction. You see, this is precisely why I warned the Council about humanity. Not merely their potential as adversaries, but their perspective as potential allies. They think beyond immediate advantage to long-term stability. The observer's ancient consciousness considered this for a moment before responding. Perhaps this crisis, painful though it has been, will prove beneficial in unexpected ways. The Council's exploitation protocols have remained unchanged for millennia. Perhaps it required a species like humanity to demonstrate their fundamental flaws. Revolution often comes from unexpected quarters. Cathrax agreed. The final council vote exceeded even Cathrax's expectations. By a margin of 28-6, with 4 abstentions, the Galactic Council formally recognized Earth as a sovereign power with full membership rights. The Harmony Accords, as the comprehensive agreement became known, established new protocols for contact with emerging civilizations, prohibiting the exploitation that had characterized previous expansions. As Alina and Chen prepared to return to Earth with news of their diplomatic victory, Thrax approached them privately. "You have achieved something remarkable," he told them. "Not merely securing your world's freedom, but fundamentally altering galactic governance." "We had a good advocate," Chen acknowledged with rare warmth. "And a moral foundation too often lacking in galactic politics," Alina added. "The strong must not prey upon the vulnerable, regardless of technological disparity." Cathrax's inner eyelids flickered with emotion. "When I first warned the Council about humanity, I feared what you might become if threatened. I never anticipated you would instead become the catalyst for a more just galaxy." As they departed the council chambers, representatives from dozens of worlds watched the human delegation with new respect, and perhaps a touch of apprehension. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had reversed the power dynamic through innovation and determination. The warning ignored had indeed extracted a heavy price, but from that payment a new order was emerging. The 20th anniversary celebration of the Harmony Accords transformed Earth's orbital space into a spectacular display of interstellar cooperation. Ships from over 70 civilizations formed an elegant dance around the planet, their diverse designs representing the full spectrum of galactic cultures now engaged in genuine partnership with humanity. Admiral Chen, now in his 70s but rejuvenated by medical treatments that would have seemed miraculous 2 decades earlier, stood at the viewport of Harmony Station's diplomatic hub. Below him, Earth shone blue and serene, healing from the environmental damage of the brief alien occupation. "I never thought I'd see Valaxian and Synthar vessels conducting joint exercises with our fleet," he remarked to Alina as she joined him at the observation deck. "Former adversaries often make the strongest allies," she replied. Her academic robes marked her current position as Earth's science consul, though she had served as ambassador to the Galactic Council for the previous decade. "Especially when they've learned to respect each other's capabilities the hard way." Chen smiled wryly. "Some lessons are expensive but effective." A soft chime announced the arrival of their honored guest. Ambassador Thrax entered the chamber, his scales now showing the iridescent patterns of advanced age among his species. He moved with the dignity of one whose once controversial positions had been thoroughly vindicated by history. "My friends," Cathrax greeted them warmly, extending his primary limbs in the human handshake gesture he had adopted years ago. "The view from here always reminds me why your world was worth fighting for." "The fight continues in different forms," Chen observed. "The Harmony Doctrine has spread to 42 previously exploited worlds, but resistance from traditional powers remains strong in the outer systems. Revolution is never complete," Cathrax acknowledged. "But the trajectory is clear. The Valaxian military hierarchy has undergone fundamental reforms. The Zinthar economic model now incorporates sustainability metrics alongside profit calculations. Even the Kintai consciousness network has opened itself to genuine exchange rather than exploitation." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of a young human diplomat escorting a delegation of newly contacted beings from the Triangulum Galaxy, the first extragalactic species to establish relations with the Council. Ambassador Cathrax, the young diplomat, called out. "The Mela representatives specifically requested to meet you." Your historical address on ethical contact protocols has become standard training in their diplomatic academy. Thrax's scales shifted to a pattern of modest pleasure as he moved to greet the new arrivals. The slender, crystalline beings bowed in the formal greeting of their culture, clearly honored to meet the legendary architect of the post-Pandora galactic order. As the diplomatic reception continued around them, Elena guided Chen toward a quieter section of the observation deck. "There's something you should know," she said once they were alone. "The Dovan observer contacted me privately yesterday. The ancient records he mentioned 20 years ago, about the species similar to humans who rebelled against exploitation, have been fully recovered from the SEAL archives." Chen raised an eyebrow. "And they were our ancestors, James, not direct genetic lineage, but a branch of humanity transplanted from Earth approximately 50,000 years ago by entities even the Dovans don't fully understand." Chen absorbed this revelation silently before responding. So when Thrax warned the Council about humanity's potential, history was already repeating itself. Elena finished. "Our distant cousins had already demonstrated what happens when humans are exploited by technologically superior forces. And the Council erased those records to hide their mistakes," Chen concluded grimly. "The new Council has voted to restore the complete historical archives, including the earlier human rebellion. Thrax says it's essential to remember past failures to prevent future ones." Below them, the celebration continued as diplomatic teams from hundreds of worlds commemorated the charter that had transformed galactic civilization. The Harmony Doctrine's preamble, displayed prominently on massive screens throughout the station, had become famous throughout inhabited space. "No sentient species shall dominate another. No civilization shall exploit the vulnerable. The strong shall defend the weak until they grow strong in turn. This is the legacy of Earth's stand, that from the brink of subjugation came a vision of partnership across the stars." Later that evening, as the formal celebrations wound down, Thrax found himself in conversation with a young Zinthar diplomat whose ancestor had been among the first to recognize humanity's potential. "Is it true what they say?" the young diplomat asked. "That you knew humans would prevail even when you warned against contacting them?" Thrax considered the question carefully. "I knew they would resist exploitation with remarkable effectiveness. What I could not predict was how they would use their victory once achieved. That was the true revelation, and our great fortune. The Pandora incident is still studied at our academy," the Zinthar commented. "The non-lethal approach is particularly emphasized in our ethical training." "As it should be," Thrax replied. "Humanity could have engineered extinction-level pathogens. Their restraint in victory revealed more about their character than their ingenuity in combat." Across the chamber, Elena was introducing Chen to the Luminary representatives whose timely warning had helped establish contact with Thrax during the crisis. The bioluminescent beings pulsed with patterns of deep respect toward the human leaders. "The galaxy has grown more complicated since the Harmony Accords," the senior Luminary observed, "but also more just. Previously marginalized species now have council representation. Exploitative practices that were once standard are now prohibited. There is still resistance," Chen acknowledged. "The traditional powers haven't fully accepted the new order." "Revolution is never complete," the Luminary echoed Thrax's earlier sentiment. "But it is irreversible once certain thresholds are crossed. Humanity's stand against exploitation was such a threshold." As the station rotated, Earth came into view once more through the viewport. Cities glittered like earthbound stars across continents now protected by laws that extended far beyond their atmosphere. The planet that had nearly been reduced to a mere resource extraction point had instead become the catalyst for galactic reform. The warning about humanity had indeed been ignored. The aliens had paid a heavy price for that mistake. But from that costly lesson had emerged something none had foreseen: a reformed galactic society, where exploitation gave way to cooperation, where strength protected rather than dominated. And somewhere in the vast chamber, Thrax watched with quiet satisfaction. The warning ignored had become the lesson learned, and the price paid had purchased something beyond value. A future among the stars worthy of all sentient beings.